Do you acknowledge that he is kind of having a moment and he's become this like phenomenon and people are moving towards him in the Democratic Party?
His ideology is more relevant than people realize, and he himself is not as relevant as people think.
Joining me now, we've got Steven Bonnell, aka Destiny. Destiny, thanks for coming on. I'm very curious to get your thoughts because I saw this online getting a lot of traction. Apparently, Pangburn, who I know you've done debates with in the past, reached out to you and Hasan about doing a debate, your biggest long-term op, potentially with $5 million they think they could raise for Palestinian children if Hasan were to accept. I mean, are you hopeful that he will, or is it still a doubt for you?
I've made like debate challenges in the past like this, where it's like, hey, we can fundraise for Palestinian children or whatever you want, like if you want to have a discussion on this topic. But no, they never accept for a good reason. Yeah.
But you guys go back and forth so much talking about each other on your various streams and channels that it's like, what exactly would be the argument against debating you, right? Whether he thinks you're terrible or not, I mean, it's a debate. That's the point. You talk to people who you think are awful or super wrong. You're obviously somebody very relevant. He spends a lot of time talking about you. Why wouldn't he want to talk to you and maybe, expose you or call you out or whatever he thinks he's going to do? Especially, I mean, imagine what $5 million for Palestinian children could do. How many meals that could fund, how much medication that could fund. It's like a little bewildering to me that anybody wouldn't snap at that opportunity.
Yeah, that should make people wonder why. I mean, the actual answer is that he doesn't spend very much time talking about my political positions. He just spends time personally trashing me or, diving through streamer drama. And for a lot of these people in this realm on the internet, they don't really spend much time talking about their political positions at all. So I don't actually even think he could defend any of his political positions against an actual challenging conversation. There's a reason why if you watch all the interviews these guys do, and MAGA does it as well, but the far left people have figured it out too, they only do uncritical, non-challenging interviews because it allows them to just have their opinion laundered and seem normal and never actually face any real pushback. So they'll avoid the critical conversations as much as possible because the illusion would be shattered immediately amongst their audience if they had to actually have a conversation and then their audience realized they had no clue what they were talking about.
Well, I've seen him do like maybe one or two semi-adversarial interviews with Ross Douthat with the New York Times. I think the trigonometry guys had him on and pushed him on some stuff. And those did not go well for him, right?
Yeah.
The clips out of that were pretty brutal. But he mostly does these friendly sit-downs. I wonder, what is it that you think would be the most fertile ground to like press Hasan on that the softball kind of mainstream media or podcasters never do?
Jesus. So much stuff. I mean, related to Israel-Palestine, there's a lot there. Like, I think getting firm answers on, do you think that Hezbollah as a militant group like should exist in Lebanon and is representative of the Lebanese people? Because every time they talk about Hezbollah, they never really mention how they started there. It was Iran funding them and creating them. And they never mention the fact that they were there without the consent of the Lebanese people or government. They were just a militia that was too powerful to be ruled with. I would want to hear, what does an actual equitable solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict look like? They always point to like one state and then they just leave it. But the reality is they're pushing towards a state that would have the Jewish minority. Why would the Jewish people there expect that they could live in peace when they haven't, with any Arab majority country or really any country, historically speaking? There's always been anti-Semitism. Why do they think that this would be a peaceful solution for Jewish people? Do you think Jewish people realistically would ever accept it? Should this be a decision that's forced upon them if they don't accept it? If we were to cut ties to Israel, should we also go to war with Israel to force the dissolution of that state as a Jewish majority state? And then if the Jewish people started to experience genocide or ethnic cleansing in that country, would we step in to help them? These are all questions that I think would be fascinating to exploit because they've never been pushed on any of these things ever. Economically, there's a whole bunch of stuff, but he's so weak on even Marxist theory and so weak on economics, I don't even know how much of that conversation he could have. Like when you guys talk about banning corporations or banning billionaires or banning, like what does this actually look like in practice? Billionaire taxes don't raise very much money. How would you actually make housing more affordable? What are the policies that you're pointing at? Because every weird socialist communist thing you point towards doesn't seem to benefit the actual countries that do it. Like Vietnam and China and all these other countries that started to industrialize and then explode economically did so because of other capitalist countries that were either buying their goods or, doing foreign direct investment in their businesses. I don't know. There's like a million things you could chat about that I've never heard any of these people pushed on before.
I wonder if with the kind of rise of the DSA and the candidates that he's supporting, he'll have to drill down on some of this stuff because, I mean, really, like, it's very easy to just have vibes appeal to or pander to vibes about, we're going to tax the rich, or we're going to make this a right, make this a right, make this a right. But it's a lot harder to explain how that works in practice, and you kind of reckon with the specifics of it all. And we've seen some of these candidates decline to do so repeatedly, right? You'll ask them like, hey, do you still believe in abolishing the police? And they'll go, well, I believe strongly we need to address the root causes of crime. And it's like, that's just a total non sequitur. So
Mhm.
I imagine he would do something similar to that. But it is interesting. I mean, the amount of words that have been dedicated to like his workout routine or his aesthetics or his vibe or his popularity versus actually honing into his beliefs. Because do you acknowledge that he is kind of having a moment and he's become this like phenomenon and people are moving towards him in the Democratic Party? Or do you still kind of see him as a fringe figure?
I think he's more, in some ways, his ideology is more relevant than people realize, and he himself is not as relevant as people think. I think what's happening is in New York, this big socialist moment that we're kind of having, I think was really more of a function of Mamdani's power as a kind of kingmaker person, as the ability to leverage his political popularity to get other people elected. Because in California, you didn't see this play out at all. I think every candidate that they had that was like DSA aligned or socialist ended up getting crushed. And for the most part, they aren't having too much success around the country. We're waiting for El Sayed. The Francesca governor race, if she loses the primary, or I'm sorry, if she loses the general, that's going to be really bad in Wisconsin. So I think that right now, Mamdani was very popular. People like Hasan kind of like jump onto that. And then people are thinking that socialism is more popular than it actually is. But it is a growing thing in the party that the party seems unable to deal with because the Democratic Party just can't message anything effectively. So they have kind of like co-opted our messaging apparatus, and they're using it very effectively to signal to Democratic voters and attack like the moderate Dems, while the moderate Dems are still having to deal with Trump. So yeah, I do think there is a moment right now that in some ways is overemphasized and in other ways is underemphasized. And I hope the Democrats get better at responding to it.
Yeah, I think it's hard because it's like, what exactly do people believe in or not believe in? I think they're benefiting from the confusion that a lot of people have about what capitalism is,
Uh-huh.
what democratic socialism is. Because I think when you see these polls that are like, well, 2 in 5 Democrats say they're democratic socialists or what have you, I think they mean like Norway or
Yeah, of course.
Sweden.
Yeah.
Many of those voters do. But the actual electeds, the Francesca Hongs, the DSA Congress members, and the thought leaders and influencers like Hasan, that's not what they mean. I mean, you look at that platform and it's of the DSA, and it's seize control with the government of large corporations and institutions. When you look at Hasan, he's talking about China as an economic model and not the liberalization of China, right?
Yeah.
But the stuff that came before that. So I that's very worrisome to me because it feels like a very easy bait and switch there that allows them to kind of, Trump does this where because he does his weave and he says all sorts of crazy stuff and contradicts himself constantly, he can be all things to all people.
Uh-huh.
So for example, he was pro-life and pro-choice, depending who you asked, right? People who were pro-choice were like, well, Trump's not going to ban abortion, because he would gesture in certain contexts or conversations towards not being a hardcore pro-lifer. But then a lot of pro-life hardcore people was like, no, Trump's with one of us. He speaks at the national pro-life rallies. He says he's pro-life, all this. And because he wasn't really forced to drill down into specifics, he was able to get both of those groups or people in both of those groups to support him. I feel like they're doing the same thing with like leftist socialism and people who don't actually want that.
Yeah, because if you don't have anybody that can understand like the game that's being played, especially like it's a very intentional subversive game that's being played by the far left, but because the Democrats don't fully understand it, you end up not being able to message at all against it. And then they can basically present themselves however they want. And they play a lot with the words and they exist a lot in the ambiguity to where if you listen to them speak, like they will intentionally, like if you're listening to Hasan talk or Vosh or a lot of these DSA people, they'll interchangeably use like democratic socialist and social democrat. Even though it seems silly, like we understand these things to mean quite significantly different things. Like a social democrat definitionally is still like a capitalist, like staunchly a capitalist. They just want expanded welfare state and everything else. But like a democratic socialist is like somebody who wants to be a socialist. They want to move the government in a socialist direction, the abolishment of private property, of people being able to hire employees, invest in companies or whatever. They want to abolish that. But the DSA people all mince these words a lot, and they do it intentionally And so then now you have, strategically. And now you've got, like a third of the Democratic electorate is like, I think I am a socialist. Or I think it's like, one third identify now as like democratic socialist. And it's like, I don't know if you guys even know what this necessarily means. And you could argue in one sense, well, then it doesn't matter. It's not like they're becoming socialist, which is true, but you're creating
But they're voting for that. And they're voting for leaders who do believe that, kind of.
Yeah, and you're creating fertile ground for people to abuse that in the future, to where it's like, oh, well, you said that you supported democratic socialists. I'm a democratic socialist. They do this very well. Hasan does this really well, where he uses a lot of language where, he'll mix up these words intentionally. And then you end up thinking that like, oh yeah, I think I would support somebody like Hasan because I support like these basic welfare policies. But in actuality, he's slowly introducing this vernacular that's going to get you to accept more radical stuff down the line. And it's annoying.
I also don't know how you compete with it, because if I try to put myself in the shoes of, like, say, in the 2028 Democratic primary of a more pragmatic Democrat, how do you campaign against fantastical promises, right? Somebody who promises you're going to have everything. We're going to guarantee your housing, guarantee your job, guarantee your healthcare, and only the rich are going to pay more taxes. Nothing else will change. And that's like obviously fantasy land. It's not real, but they can campaign on it, and people don't really understand the nuances or the numbers behind this stuff. So how is like a pragmatic Democrat supposed to compete with that? Say, well, I can help expand Medicaid in this state to, a million people more or something. Well, this other person's saying everyone's going to have free healthcare and everything's going to be amazing for free and no taxes, except for on Elon Musk. So it's like, how am I supposed to compete with that as any sort of honest or pragmatic, person?
I mean, the only thing you can really do is, and this is like the worst thing, is wait for them to get into government, and then when they fail, then you kind of say, well, look, like their ideas didn't work.
We have to let it crash and burn first?
Yeah, because unfortunately, like, I agree with you, because there are people sometimes in my audience who'll ask me like, hey, look at like Francesca's platform. Is there any part of this that you disagree with? And it's like, well, paid vacation and free sick leave and free child leave and free child care and free education and free. And it's like, well, I guess I don't disagree with any of this at all. It sounds kind of awesome. It's like, how the do you pay for it though? And they don't have to address that question yet because they haven't been governing yet. So they can just say like, well, the billionaire tax will pay for everything. It's like, well, billionaires have a lot of money, I guess, maybe. And then that's it. That's where the conversation stops. And it's like, oh, okay.
Well, and it's like they're allergic to some of the math of this stuff, because you could confiscate the wealth of every existing billionaire in full, and you'd fund like what, half, which obviously would have some pretty bad economic effects. And you'd fund what, like half the current federal government annual budget without even the new stuff?
Maybe, yeah. And really not even that, right? Because like most of these people's wealth exists on paper. What do you think is going to happen when you start offloading all of Elon's shares? Like the cost of the price of Tesla and everything is going to plummet if you start.
But I'm saying even on their own terms.
No, yeah. So yeah, it's not. It just wouldn't. Yeah, none of it would work in practice. But but you don't have to compete with them in practice because they haven't practiced any of it yet. They're just ideas on paper. So what do you do?
But do you think, I mean, from an outside perspective, looking at the Democrats right now, it looks like Hasan Piker is winning the heart and soul, the battle for the heart and soul of the Democratic base, and pragmatic Democrats like yourself are losing, right? It looks like I see the most popular figures are people like Bernie, like Zoran, like AOC, who maybe aren't quite, I mean, Zoran I actually think is pretty similar to Hasan ideologically, but the other two are at least posture as more moderate, but they certainly come from the same strain of thought, and not the strain of thought that is at all, pro-capitalism, doesn't hate America, doesn't hate the West. They come from that radical left strain of thought. I mean, it looks like they're winning and you're losing, no?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it feels like right now. But I mean, for some of it, like I would blame the conservatives for playing kind of this like policyless game world as well, because it's like Donald Trump also promised a bunch of stuff that he never came through on, and people didn't really seem to care about that at all, I guess, which is frustrating. And so we've kind of like we've conditioned ourselves now to this world where policy just doesn't matter to anybody anymore. And yeah, I don't know how you. I don't know how Americans ever deal with that. Like there's so much misinformation. There's so many lies out there in the media. We're so untethered from what's actually happening. All the policy discussion that we're at right now is just so stupid publicly. Like it's all just so fantastically dumb. Coming back to reality is going to be a challenge for the American people. Yeah, but we have to do it. Yeah.
I mean, it's all kind of blackpilling, especially when you look at the content creators on the left or right that are most popular. You just regularly see stuff that's just absolutely not correct or real or based in reality at all. I mean, I was just watching Benny Johnson and the other guy, Tim Pool, are promoting this idea that the reason that rap music has dipped in popularity in country music is
APAC?
instead, at the top of the
Oh no,
charts.
wait,
Not
USAID,
APAC.
USAID.
It's
I've heard this
USAID,
one before, yeah.
which is like, what? Listen, I don't know that much about USAID, but I know that you can Elon, there's no evidence they were funding or rap music inside the United States. That's not even the kind of thing they do. And Elon and all those people went through the whole database of all their grants and everything and never came up with anything like that. If they're just saying, suspicious timing, I'm just noticing. And it's like, what kind of brain rot slop environment are we in?
Yeah.
And you see a left populist version of it. I can't tell you how many times I've seen More Perfect Union post some slop about data centers or whatever that's totally inaccurate and gets community noted, but doesn't matter. The amount of people that see the correction is always going to be a tenth or a hundredth of the amount of people that see the lie. So it's hard to not feel just like totally black-pilled by that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. There's a weird theory that a lot of culture stuff that was pushed on us by Jewish people that were trying to weaken our race by distracting us with dumb things. So Jewish funding, that's why Candace Owens talked about it. It's the theory that like porn was founded by like a Jewish guy and then disseminated in the US to weaken the white man. And then rap music and all these things were discovered by Jewish people to keep the black community down. And then USAID is like a funding mechanism to fund perverse culture to hurt our society. It all plays into these stupid fucking things. But I mean, like, yeah, when you have like a whole right wing that's been off on this journey for a decade, and then you look at the left and some guy's like, well, I think that we can afford Medicare for all if we just tax billionaires. It's like, that doesn't even sound that crazy compared to what the majority of the people in the right wing of the party right now currently believe. So, yeah.
But I guess it's inside the Democrats. I mean, it feels like they are in some ways mirroring the worst or similar impulses with the fantastical promises, with the blatant pandering. I don't know. When you look at these candidates who are coming out ahead in some of these races right now, it seems to me like that's where the energy and the motion is in these primaries. And I mean, I wish it weren't so. I also think this is a little hard to disentangle from the Israel question and the fact that they somewhat effectively have managed to divide these candidates on that issue. And because so many people feel so strongly on that issue, they like look the other way, like, yeah, okay, she's crazy and insane on defund the police and she wants to seize control of corporations and whatever, but she's the anti-APAC candidate. I don't know. I mean, I think that issue is incredibly complicated. But I feel like it's becoming this all-encompassing single issue thing for people that's letting a lot of other crazy fly under the radar.
Yeah, I mean, it's become such a good litmus test issue because I would say, obviously, from my perspective, no, I'm sorry, this is true. It's become a good litmus test issue because the types of solutions that the far left people are advocating for are not politically realistic, right? What they're essentially advocating for, they never outright say it, but it really would be like basically a genocide of all the Jewish people, at the very least, an ethnic cleansing of all the Jewish people in Israel. Like politically, it's not even is it just politically an untenable position. It's not like a tenable position in reality. It's like nobody's going to agree to this. It's just beyond stupid. But because you've signaled so hard on that and because you can purity test so hard on that, now you have a position that you can use to infinitely attack the moderate wing of the party because nobody can ever take on this position to appease you. And even the people that have taken on really radical anti-Israel positions haven't appeased these far left people. So, what do you do? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what's your kind of, do you think that if you actually did get on a stage with Hasan at this point, there would be widespread interest in that? Or do you think it would just, on that note, just kind of descend into just that Israel-Palestine issue? Or is it like, because I really think it's a much broader divide than just that, but that issue just kind of maps onto it.
There would be a lot of interest. Oh yeah. From my fans and from his fans. But the issue is these people, they're not thinking of numbers or interest. The leaders are, even though his fans would want to see it, and my fans would definitely want to see it, they're thinking of like what is protective of their ideology, which is why he would avoid it. Yeah, it took me a long time to figure this out because I remember for the Daily Wire people, once I started to be more aggressively anti-conservative, I noticed that a lot of them, said, oh, we don't talk to Destiny anymore. That guy's too crazy or whatever. But when you look at the viewership on the videos, like my debate with Ben Shapiro, was that over 10 million views on Lex Friedman's channel? A lot of my debates with a lot of these conservative guys on their channels and mine did really well viewership-wise. So obviously something is powering them more than just viewership or money. And I think a lot of it is like being ideologically protective.
Yeah, I think also sometimes people manage to get to these positions, but aren't actually very good under scrutiny. I mean, it's why somebody like Candace Owens is a good example. She has only done maybe one or two adversarial interviews about the whole Charlie Kirk thing, despite her making that her bread and butter for 2 years. She did one sit down with CNN and one interview with Piers Morgan. I'm not aware of anything else. She's done a bunch of softballs with super friendly things, but I think she knows that if people asked basic follow-up questions and really forced her to answer them,
Position
that a
falls
lot she
apart.
would look stupid very fast. Like, what happened to the Egyptian planes, Candace? We were told it was all about the Egyptian planes.
Yeah.
And I think that people smartly go and hide and avoid that kind of scrutiny or limelight. I mean, I have a very hard time when I do panels or interviews or what have you, getting people to come talk to you, even though it's like not that scary. They're supposed to be professionals, supposed to be their job, what they do. I mean, that's one thing I appreciate you. You're always up for it, right? You don't shy away from that.
Uh-huh.
But it feels like a lot of creators want to stay in their safe space, and that I feel like that was for a long time more of a progressive thing, but now it's pervasive among the biggest MAGA and Republican content creators. Almost exclusively do friendly, non-adversarial media.
Yeah, because it benefits you politically to engage that way, right? Like, why would you ever give an adversarial interview now when you know it can go poorly for you? When there are so many safe spaces right now, because the platforms have grown so much, and there's so many places for you to be safe on and never be challenged. You could just go there and grow your message that way. Like, why would you ever agree to do anything adversarial, right?
Well, I thought that we believed in that, right? I thought we believed in the debate me bro shtick and the marketplace of ideas and all this stuff. I did.
Yeah, a lot of people have these perspectives, but only insofar as they serve their political ends, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just interesting because of that dichotomy that people complained for so long that progressives wouldn't debate conservatives, wouldn't debate Republicans, did the whole like no platform thing and don't debate Nazis, and that still exists, and I still find that to be like cringe and silly. But now I don't think conservatives come out and say it. They're like, oh, we don't debate. No debating human rights, or that the way the kind of cringe progressives would openly admit it, they just avoid it quietly. And I almost think that's worse.
Yeah, I think it's annoying, especially when I won't besmirch our legendary Charlie Kirk, but like a lot of these conservatives will claim to be debating all the time and they want to have challenging conversations, but they'll only like go and like attack college kids and shit. They don't actually challenge somebody who can actually put up a decent argument against their beliefs. They just look for soft targets, basically. Yeah.
But I think that, so I don't necessarily have an issue with if you're talking about the Ben Shapiro campus tours with the college students coming up and the questions and everything.
Uh-huh.
That doesn't bother me, right? Like, these are not helpless victims, these children. They're not like children. They're 20-year-olds who are stepping up to the microphone. But it's not a fair fight when you have a professional debater versus a random college kid. And then the cowardly thing is if that's the only kind of debating you do, right?
Yeah,
If you're
that's my big issue, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, I do the college events sometimes. I've done quite a few of them, right? But like, that's not all I do, right? I wouldn't exclusively, like, that feels like so weak. Like, you're so unable to withstand any amount of scrutiny on your ideas that you can exclusively only debate children. Just seems like such a loser position to me. Yeah.
Well, I do think the kind of inverse of that is, though, the like liberal influencers who sit on TikTok live and just debate MAGA all day, and it's like some deranged grandma like babbling about QAnon or what have you. It's like they're not debating or engaging with the even remotely like the best version of the other side, which we all do sometimes. But I would actually like to see, and I've that's why I've tried to get you on panels and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Actual like professional advocates clash with their ideas. I feel like it's much easier to just beat up. In no other industry would we consider it normal for like a professional soccer player to hop in a rec game with like just randos on the street and just dominate them. Nobody would be like, wow, share this clip of this guy going off. But in our space, that's viewed as like very normal.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you, although even for that, I'm pretty sure that like Dean and Parker would debate any of these conservative people, but they would all dodge them. Now, Dean and
I've
Parker
invited
also
them.
dodged me, but
I've invited them.
Oh, and they really they say no?
Well, I
don't respond,
was in
basically?
contact with both of them in the past, and I have much more recently reached out to both of them to come on panels and stuff to no avail.
Huh. Oh, well.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is. Listen, I hope that the Hasan debate happens, but I'm not going to hold my breath. But I do think some of these things, as you go into a 2028 Democratic presidential primary, are going to come to a head one way or another. And the Democratic Party is going to have to pick a way forward, but I fear it's going to be the Hasan Piker, Zohran Mamdani perspective.
Hopefully not, but yeah, we're probably in an unavoidable moment where that is going to be the way forward for now, and then we just have to hope in the future that, well, I mean, I guess I'm not going to say I hope it doesn't work, but if it doesn't work out, we would hope that people would see and learn the lesson, and then we would go from there into a more, I guess, constructive direction. Yeah.
What would you do if the options were in a gubernatorial race, voting for a DSA candidate like Francesca Hong or a more moderate Republican like a Glenn Youngkin?
So these, first of all, these
for me that
always get clipped so hard,
that's it's an easy Glenn Youngkin vote, but obviously you have different policy preferences.
Like the question
and
is
values.
are you asking me are you saying if I could implement without thought completely and totally the policy positions of these two people and that's it? Or are we saying that these people are now moving in a way where they're politically relevant and they're going to influence the party in the future, and then all of the other extra kind of meta baggage that comes along with that? What
if you were just deciding the one that how they will govern the state, no broader ramifications?
Then I easily would be a center right perspective over a socialist perspective for sure. Yeah.
There you go. I mean, that would be me as well, but
then you also have to tango with the fact that my quote unquote center right kings were Cruz and Rubio, who are complete Trump admin. I mean, you can make the faces, but that is true, right? Cruz and Rubio were the neocons, right? They were and even Kasich. Kasich's not relevant.
Oh, but I'm cringing at their evolution.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's would that happen again? To another center right Republican if Q and all this shit were to grow again? I don't know.
I was shocked to see the clip of you though, where you were like AOC versus JD Vance. I'm not sure. I would have thought you would be a lock for AOC.
Well, in terms of policies that they could implement right now in the way that they move now, I would definitely say AOC. But then my problem is just because we were having a macro political conversation about a DSA takeover of the party in the future. I don't know if AOC is going to be the type of person to say no to the crazy socialists. I'm pretty sure Vance can't say no, though, to the crazy conservatives. And then I don't know how much his mind has been destroyed by, Peter Thiel and all the AI stuff and everything else. So I don't know. That's a doomsday scenario, maybe. But an AOC running in a race where there's two DSA people in Congress is also not as big of a concern. I don't know. It just comes down to these questions are always so weird because there's so much other political reality that you have to consider. I remember we asked this question a lot in the past. There was a huge thing that blew up when people were asking it was Newsom versus Trump or something, or I don't know. And but then sometimes when you answer the question, people will say well, I'd vote for this guy, or it might have been Newsom versus Hasan or Trump versus Hasan or something. And so it's well, I would vote for Hasan because I don't think he can get much of his agenda passed or something like that. And it's okay, well in that world, I would vote for Hitler over Donald Trump because I think Hitler is still really unpopular. I don't think many people like him. I don't think he would get any of his agenda passed. But then it's what
you
exactly?
You would not actually vote for Hitler over Trump.
Well, what I'm saying is that if Hitler were somehow anointed the president tomorrow, I think today most of the country still thinks that the Hitler is not a good guy, right? I think I'm safe to assume that. So that means that none of his agenda would be passed. So it's would I vote for Hitler knowing that Hitler would become the president, but nobody would do anything that he wants to do? I mean, I guess I would vote for Hitler then over a far right conservative that could get more bad stuff done. But you understand how the question, it's such a weird question to consider at that point, right? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're saying you have to consider what they will or won't be able to get done.
Kind of,
AOC,
yeah. So when you ask AOC versus JD Vance,
JD Vance not getting much done.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a moderated AOC, which I feel she has moderated quite a bit, is not really that much of a threat in terms of the things that I would want to see with the country. But if this was a hardcore subversive commie AOC who is now opening the door for a whole bunch of other commies to take over my Democratic Party, and if Trump is already on the way out and now the MAGA movement kind of recedes and maybe there's room for more moderate Republican voices, I don't know, because it's politics, man. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, well, we will see. I appreciate it. I hope the debate with Hasan happens, and we'll talk again real soon.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, thanks a lot.